Everyone, we'll get started in just a moment. We're just letting folks come in from the waiting room. Thank you. Looks like our attendees have filed in, so we'll get started. Um, Good morning, everyone. Maybe very, very early where you are, or around 10 a.m. Eastern, depending on where you live. My name's Dee Logan. I'm a project manager at the Implementation Science and Practice Advances Research Center here at UMass Chan Medical School. It's with great pleasure that I'm helping to host this webinar, Clubhouse Research, New Results, Resources, and Literature. Before I turn it over to the panelists, just a quick overview on housekeeping. Please use the chat feature for introducing yourselves quickly as you come in. That would be great. And then we have a Q&A function that Lee will be managing throughout the webinar. And so if you have questions for the panelists, please send them through the Q&A and Lee will organize them and get them ready. And when it's time for the Q&A at the end, he will reach out to which panelist is the best person to answer it. Please note the webinar is being recorded and will be made available either on the iSPARC website or the Clubhouse International website. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lee Kellogg from Clubhouse International. And thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, Dee. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Lee Kellogg, and I'm a program officer with Clubhouse International. We're an organization that supports more than 370 clubhouses around the world. We have clubhouses in 33 countries and 37 states. Our organization is involved with quality assurance, training, and of course, the important topic that we're covering today, research. I'm very excited to be facilitating what we hope will be a great discussion with a great panel and a very important topic. So thank you all for joining us today. And thank you to this panel, Colleen McKay from the Program for Clubhouse Research, Jerry Ringo from the Evergreen Club, and my colleague Liz Wright from Clubhouse International. They can give further introductions of themselves as they present their information. We have 90 minutes together today, and we'll be sharing information on the special edition of the Psychiatric Rehab Journal featuring Clubhouse research, followed by an overview of a data and research toolkit that we're really excited about, and it's in its final stages of editing. And then we'll close the presentation part with sharing of results from the 2023 Clubhouse Profile Questionnaire data. Excuse me. So as Dee mentioned, this webinar is being recorded, and we will include the link to the recording, the slides presented, and the data and research toolkit on the Clubhouse International website. We'll post that in January, but also, as Dee mentioned, the iSPARC website will have the recorded webinar and slides from this as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with an introduction of Liz.
Hi, thank you so much and welcome. I'm Liz and I'm a program officer with Clubhouse International and a part of the Data and Research Subcommittee. Clubhouse International coalitions and associations are groups of clubhouses in similar regions that connect for a forum of ongoing discussion, support, and education. And the goal of this subcommittee is to bring these groups together and focus on strengthening different parts of the coalition in different areas. And Jerry and I are enthusiastic members of the Data and Research Subcommittee.
Hi, I'm Jerry Ringo, and I've been with the Evergreen Club for over 10 years as a member. I landed in the Data Collection and Research Subcommittee sort of by accident. Kaylee from Hero House and I from the Evergreen Club were to represent Washington State on subcommittees. I chose communications and Kaylee chose data collection, and we were assigned to both. Not knowing anything about data collection or research, I contributed a little and learned a lot. I did help beta test the online CBQ and contributed a little to the toolkit. Through our work with the Data Research Subcommittee, I learned that we have thousands of member stories describing how Clubhouse has transformed their lives. And they are compelling stories, but they aren't convincing stories, at least not for those requiring quantitative evidence. They need hard numbers, so we collect data. That data can then be used to influence public policy, convince donors to donate, and prove that the Clubhouse model not only works, but it works extremely well in so many ways.
Data and research is a key factor in making the big picture personal. Data collection and research creates a culture of introspection within a clubhouse. Using data and facts to inform decisions and solve problems in the clubhouse community is critical to shaping an environment we want to attain and the evidence-based practices that benefit member recovery in all clubhouses. In addition, creating a culture of introspection and investigation promotes many clubhouse values that benefit our community as a whole. Data can tell the story of why clubhouses work. Part of the goal of the Data and Research Subcommittee was to ensure that all clubhouses in our network have access and understanding to the global research that demonstrates the effectiveness of the clubhouse model, while also making the work of data collection accessible to all clubhouses.
As clubhouses, we're constantly collecting data. There's member data that includes demographics such as age, gender, ethnicity, housing status, income level, and education. We also collect and store data on diagnosis, treatment history, and goals and aspirations. Program data includes such items as participation rates, resource utilization, and program effectiveness. Here we find things like attendance, member hours spent in the work order day, member satisfaction, and program costs. With operational data, we look at such things as staffing levels, financial data, volunteer involvement, and facility utilization. And last but not least are the compliance data. Here we document adherence to the standards of legal and regulatory compliance. By collecting and analyzing this data, clubhouses can demonstrate their effectiveness, identify areas for improvement, and secure continued funding. Data can be collected through surveys, useful for program data, or by documentation. The attendance sheet is one example of documentation, but there are sign-in and sign-up sheets for education, employment, and housing classes and individual help, and these help provide us with compliance and program data. The more data we collect and use, the more accurate picture we get of our individual clubhouse. And by combining data from many clubhouses, we have enough data to interest researchers. More importantly, members' shared life experience of having a mental illness and being in Clubhouse make members a valuable source of data for researchers. The committee was fortunate to have some real researchers serving on it. They speak academia and they have their own vocabulary. One thing I noted was the Clubhouse convention of stealing ideas from other clubhouses and tailoring it to meet our own needs is called plagiarism in the academic world and is highly frowned upon. Plagiarism has cost people careers. Fortunately, we have Colleen McKay from the University of Massachusetts, who understands the ins and outs of making research public in our corner, and she will introduce an issue of a journal publication devoted entirely to Clubhouse and later help us navigate the results of the 2023 Clubhouse Profile Questionnaire.
Good morning, everyone. As Jerry mentioned, I'm Colleen McKay. I'm an assistant professor at the UMass Chan Medical School in the Implementation Science Practices and Advances Research Center, or what we call iSPARC for short. And I'm also the director of the program for Clubhouse research. I want to thank everyone who's here today in the audience. I know we kind of have a wide group of people that have joined us this morning, including Clubhouse members and staff. If you're from a Clubhouse and you're watching today's webinar as a group, if you could just put in the chat which Clubhouse you're from and how many members and staff are watching this morning, we would appreciate it. I'd also like to acknowledge our mental health administrators, funders, legislators, all the people that are in the audience today, as well as some researchers that we've collaborated with and are also collaborating with other clubhouses. So thank you for joining us today. So just a little bit about the program for Clubhouse research. It was started back in 2000 through an affiliation between Clubhouse International and the UMass Chan Medical School, really to begin to increase the amount of research on the Clubhouse model, as well as the quality of that research. So at UMass Chan, we're in the Department of Psychiatry in the Implementation Science and Practices Advances Research Center. The PCR, the Program for Clubhouse Research. So we coordinate, promote, conduct Clubhouse research projects congruent with Clubhouse philosophy. We provide a lot of technical assistance to researchers or mental health administrators who want to know more about research and the Clubhouse model. And we do a lot of dissemination, so trying to get information about Clubhouse research out to clubhouses and researchers considering participation in Clubhouse research. Some of the other things that we do, we have a set of guidelines for Clubhouse research. So if you are in a Clubhouse and you are thinking about doing a research project, the guidelines have all sorts of things that you can think about as a program before you begin your study. You know, what is the researcher going to do with the information they collect? How are they going to get input from members and staff kind of throughout that research project? And, you know, what are they going to do when they're done? Are they going to share it with you? Are they going to publish it? Where is that data going to go? How are they going to make sure that your Clubhouse's data is secure throughout the process? So things like that to be thinking about as you're going through research. And then we certainly conduct Clubhouse research with clubhouses and academic institutions and researchers both in and out of the US. I know there were some people registered from France this morning, France for the webinar this morning, or for evening for you. If you are on, thank you for joining us today. So just a little bit quickly about the history of Clubhouse research. So most Clubhouse people know that Fountain House was started back in 1948. The first research on clubhouses at all was back in 1963, and that was one study at Fountain House. By 1993, there were 32 articles on clubhouses in the research literature, in journals. Most of those were in a special issue in the Psych Rehab Journal back in 1992. In 1994, Clubhouse International started operating, and that's really kicked off the first broad systematic data collection across clubhouses in the US and around the world. Between 1995 and 2000, there was a randomized clinical trial of Clubhouse and the Program for Assertive Community Treatment funded by SAMHSA, the United States Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, looking at employment outcomes between members who participated in Clubhouse and individuals who participated in PACT. And what the study found was that Clubhouse members became employed just as quickly as people in PACT. They earned more and they worked longer. Jump forward to 2000, the program for Clubhouse research began. Around that time, there were approximately 300 Clubhouse articles. And then you can see things kind of begin to really ramp up. In 2011, SAMHSA included the Clubhouse model on their National Registry of Evidence-Based Practices and Programs. Around that time, there were about 700 Clubhouse articles. The SAMHSA registry isn't really functioning anymore, but one of the things they found in that review, there's a review for research and there's a review for implementation resources. And in terms of the implementation resources, the Clubhouse model got a perfect score, 4 out of 4. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those implementation resources today. In 2018, we published a systematic review of the research that had been published on the model. The following year, there were manuscripts published about clubhouses in Australia, Canada, China, Hong Kong, Denmark, England, Finland, Ireland, Norway, and Sweden. Around that time, the amount of research had grown to over 900 articles. Jump forward to 2024, this year, we've rolled out the web version of the Clubhouse Profile Questionnaire, and you'll hear a lot more about that throughout the presentation today. We're also very excited to announce that the Psychiatric Rehabilitation Journal published a special issue on the Clubhouse model in the fall of this year. So there are links, and once you get the presentation, these links are functional. You'll be able to click to the specific articles in the PowerPoint. There were 9 articles on the model, really a wide mix of research, qualitative and quantitative, from inside and outside of the US. So a group of researchers in Canada looked at an evaluation of the impact on the Clubhouse model on hospitalizations and community functioning during the pandemic. A group from Fountain House and other researchers that they collaborate with also looked at members' engagement patterns at the Clubhouse before, during, and after the pandemic. Joy Agner and colleagues looked at virtual engagement in the Clubhouse, how to support people who are participating in the Clubhouse in a hybrid environment. A group from Fountain House used participatory action research practices for Clubhouses. Jessica Wodolek and colleagues from several Clubhouses looked at a tool from the World Health Organization's array of tools, really, to implement and see whether this tool would be effective for use within Clubhouses. This is one of 2 or 3 World Health Organization tools that Clubhouses are now using, kind of beginning to really standardize data collection tools that we use. The Hawaii Clubhouse Coalition and Joy Agner created a conceptual model of how Clubhouses impact health and quality of life. And then the last 2 articles in the special issue are around a new theory of social practice that these researchers and others are proposing for the Clubhouse model. This model is new. It hasn't been tested yet. So there's a lot of work there to be done to see if it fits the Clubhouse, model, whether it fits in the Clubhouse community, and ultimately it becomes incorporated into Clubhouse practices. So if you haven't seen this yet, check it out. Some of the articles are open access, which means they're free for you to download. Others do require a purchase. As Jerry mentioned earlier, as academics, there are copyright issues that we deal with, so we can't just give them away, but we'll try to make sure we get the information summarized and accessible for everyone. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Jerry and Liz, who are going to talk about a new toolkit, another implementation resource around Clubhouse data and research.
Thank you, Colleen. One of the projects that the Data and Research Subcommittee took on this year was creating a data and research toolkit. Clubhouse International has been creating toolkits to support clubhouses in their daily work. And some toolkits that are already widely in use are a wellness toolkit and an employment toolkit that share best practices on this. These toolkits provide a foundation of the rationale about the importance of the work that we do, as well as best practices to incorporate these initiatives and projects into Clubhouse's work order day. Today, we're going to share with you a teaser of the Data and Research Toolkit that will be available in the Clubhouse International portal in the new year. The portal is an internal resource that all member clubhouses have access to so that they can have resources and share resources. Next slide, please.
The Clubhouse Data and Research Toolkit includes both the why and how of data collection, including ways to incorporate data collection into the work order day.
The Data and Research Subcommittee is in the final stages of editing the toolkit and wanted to share with everyone today an overview of the table of contents and highlight a few sections. What data clubhouses collect can evolve and may differ regionally. Data collection and research may look different in every clubhouse, and the committee looked intentionally at how to share this information without being overly prescriptive. It was a really delicate balance, and we think we found a way to show the information, but also not say this is what you have to do. Clubhouses are collecting data every day as part of an enriching work order day and may not even realize how much they're already analyzing that information to help support their program grow and shaping their program based off of the information gathered. So in this first section, we focus on data collection in the work order day. In this section, we also have a spreadsheet that compares different data collection tools, such as Clubhouse-specific tools like the CPQ, and external tools like Health Information Exchange HEI tool to highlight what Clubhouse characteristics are in that tool. So clubhouses can decide for themselves what tools they want to use, what is covered in that, and how to compare and maybe use multiple tools to have surveys or have different research going on within their clubhouse. The intent behind this comparative spreadsheet is for clubhouses to see what reporting tools and contrast what information they collect and decide what works for them at their clubhouse. We also have an article written by our friends at Magnolia Clubhouse and Case Western Reserve University, who are also part of our committee, that share the best practices around how clubhouses can partner with universities. We encourage clubhouses who are interested in building these partnerships to collect with the Data and Research Subcommittee. In this first section, we also have an overview of different data collection platforms. There's no one-size-fits-all data collection platform, but many clubhouses partner with great tech organizations to make these platforms. So in this section, it describes the platforms and shares the contacts of clubhouses who use them and how clubhouses can take that information and to determine what platform is the best for them.
The appendix is filled with treasures, such as a much needed, by me anyway, glossary, a key of domains of Clubhouse data, resources, and a step-by-step how-to on how to search for journal articles using PubMed and Google Scholar. All in all, the toolkit provides valuable information and help to clubhouses.
The toolkit is intended to support clubhouses who have just opened their doors, as well as well-established, long-standing clubhouses. The resource and examples are also intended to grow and be added to, so we will continue to build those out as clubhouses engage with data collection and research initiatives within their own clubhouses. Next slide, please.
One part of the toolkit is devoted to the Clubhouse Profile Questionnaire, explaining what the CBQ is, how it's used, and why it is so important to Clubhouse. Information is included about the program for Clubhouse research and how to access and complete the CBQ, as well as various publications using CPQ data.
The CPQ is also an important resource and component of the accreditation process. Accreditation is Clubhouse's quality assurance process, and we want to make sure that we are demystifying the process around the CPQ and ensuring that Clubhouses find the process accessible. The content gathered in the CPQ, as Colleen will share shortly, tells the powerful story of the importance and impact of the work in Clubhouses. The Data and Research Subcommittee feels that these chapters in the toolkit will help Clubhouses build systems to collect data and support engagement in the CPQ process.
The subcommittee had the opportunity to beta test the online CPQ for functionality and ease of use. I once had a roommate early in this century who was a game tester for Nintendo and Microsoft, and he told me about the grandma mode, where the tester pretends to know nothing about gaming and would deliberately drive the wrong direction on the street or try to walk through walls to make sure the game could handle the unexpected. Naturally, today's grandmothers are much more tech savvy than was the norm 20 years ago. I took this approach with the CPQ. Attempts to enter numbers in text fields or text in number fields were caught by the program. It only froze up on me a few times and those got fixed. The result is an intuitive and user-friendly program for entering the data in the Clubhouse collects. At the Evergreen Club, the work of compiling the data is divided up among our 3 units. Much of the work is done with paper and pencil, making meaningful work accessible for all members, and members and staff work side by side on compiling the non-HIPAA protected data. Having completed the CPQ, we eagerly wait for the overall results so we can compare ourselves to the norm. Colleen has the most recent results from the CPQ that she will share with us.
Thank you, Jared. Just a plug quickly, you're seeing the 2023 results of the CPQ today. This was supposed to be presented earlier at the International Clubhouse Conference, which had to be postponed due to the hurricanes in Florida. We are close to wrapping up the 2024 data collection. So if your Clubhouse has not yet completed the CPQ, we would love to get one from you quickly. So as others have mentioned, the CPQ is now on a HIPAA compliant, secure web-based platform. The CPQ does not gather any individual member level information. It's all at the level of the Clubhouse. So you might ask things about members, but it's, how many members participate each day, each month? What are the overall demographics of members look like? How many staff Clubhouse have? And really the areas in the CPQ mimic the areas in the Clubhouse standards in many ways. So funding, governance, administration. So is the Clubhouse a freestanding or auspiced agency? Where do they get their funding from? And then think, what happens during the day in the Clubhouse? What happens during the work order day? What are the types of activities that members and staff are involved with? What types of supports does the Clubhouse offer around employment, housing, education? And also we ask about participation in training and research, interest in research. It is administered here at UMass Chan. As previously mentioned, it's also used by Clubhouse International for the quality assurance and accreditation process, program improvement, and then tracking the development of the Clubhouse model over time. Sharing findings with stakeholders. So there's CPQ data published in SAMHSA's Mental Health United States 2010 and Behavioral Health 2012. And we've also collaborated with some researchers who have used de-identified aggregate data from the CPQ for other studies. Once again, the links in these slides will be available to you when you get the PowerPoint slide deck later. This is just a list of the different publications that include CPQ data from over the years. As Jerry mentioned, the new web platform, there's some screenshots here to give you a sense of what the new platform looks like. Really just a big thank you to not only the members and staff on the Coalition's data subcommittee, but a number of clubhouses from around the world really gave us some input and feedback on the web-based tool in order to try to make it as user-friendly as possible. So you can see there are, a lot of just clicking. So yes, no buttons or drop-down lists, areas that you can just kind of check off. And then there are some data checks built in. You can see some places there's some text in red. And those things kind of automatically populate and calculate as a clubhouse is filling in the CPQ data on the web platform. So in 2023, there were 350 clubhouses affiliated with Clubhouse International when we asked everyone to complete the CPQ. We had 250 clubhouses complete and return it from 27 countries and 35 states, which is a 71% return rate overall. We did receive a lot of positive feedback around the new platform. You will see, well, as we go from slide to slide, even though 250 clubhouses completed the CPQ, the ends will vary. So there is some missing data from some items, depending on where a clubhouse is located. They may not collect certain pieces of information. The budget, salaries, wages, costs, they're all very just kind of rough averages and are not adjusted for the cost of living in each country, and also should not be used for cost setting purposes because of those things. So on the averages, data from clubhouses less than 2-year-old, it's been excluded. It's included in the totals, but in averages, we don't want to skew things down for programs that are just getting started. We do ask all new clubhouses to complete the CPQ. And the reason we do that is so that each clubhouse can begin to see what kinds of information is needed for clubhouse accreditation, what are the kinds of things that Clubhouse International is looking for. And that gives the clubhouse some time to really think about how they're going to gather this information and how it's going to be incorporated into the work order today. So, accreditation. So Clubhouse International, Clubhouse accreditation, there's really 3 kinds of accreditation that some clubhouse could get. Now, some of the new clubhouses wouldn't be accredited yet. About 2.8% have 1 year. So a 1-year accreditation, there's some things that the clubhouses need to work on in some of the areas of the clubhouse standards. A conditional 3-year, most of the things that you would need in the standards have been implemented in the clubhouse, but they might have some area that they need to work on. So they get the conditional accreditation. And then a full 3-year really indicates that a clubhouse is in kind of full compliance with all the international clubhouse standards. So clubhouse characteristics. Some of these may seem a little odd to you, like why we would collect the interior space, like how big the physical space of a clubhouse is. But we get asked that a lot from people, that are thinking about starting a clubhouse or a new group that's formed to begin a clubhouse. Like, how much space are we going to need to get going? About half of the clubhouses have a board of directors. The other half have an advisory board. There are some clubhouses that have both. The type of board really is usually indicative of whether a clubhouse is a freestanding organization or it has an auspice or parent agency. A freestanding clubhouse usually has an independent board, where auspice clubhouses tend to have advisory boards. And you can see from the the members there. There's member participation on boards. It's typically about 3 members on average per clubhouse. About 3/4 of the clubhouses indicate they belong to a coalition. There are clubhouses in states or countries where there may only be one clubhouse, in which case they may not have a coalition formed yet. Virtually all clubhouses try to meet all of the international clubhouse standards. About 3/4 of the clubhouses that responded to this survey are accredited in some fashion, whether it's a 1-year or a 3-year by Clubhouse International. And today, on average, mental health clubhouses have been in operation for over 20 years. In terms of costs, and once again, this is just a very rough average across all clubhouses. Costs have not been adjusted for the cost of living in the different countries. All costs are presented in US dollars today. Most of the attendees today are from the US. So an annual budget of an average of about $650,000, but you can see in the range, there are some very small clubhouses with very limited operating budgets and some very large clubhouses. The cost per member per year is calculated using the annual budget and the number of active members that participate in the clubhouse. And that's approximately $7,500 a year. Once again, just a very rough calculation is to give you a general idea of what it costs for someone to participate in the clubhouse, and about $70 per member per day. The daily cost is based on the average daily attendance. And once again, you can see in the range, there's really wide variability in the costs and budgets. So where does the funding come from for clubhouses? Almost every single clubhouse gets funding from public sources, but some rely on private sources. And once again, this can be a reflection of where a clubhouse is located, whether it's auspiced or freestanding. Within the US today, about 60% of clubhouses responding to the survey indicate they receive funding from Medicaid. Other areas with funding commonly are state mental health contracts. So the boards, and I apologize, this is kind of a busy slide. With the change in the web-based version, we're able to kind of generate some more meaningful information about clubhouses. So once again, a board of directors would typically be for a freestanding program, where an advisory board is clubhouses that are operated by an auspice agency. And you can see there are some really distinct differences in the role of the board, depending on which type of board a clubhouse has. So in a freestanding clubhouse, the board is often providing the fiscal oversight, supporting the executive director, evaluating the clubhouse director, kind of ensuring, accountability, legal and ethic integrity. Those are kind of the biggest ones in the mental health clubhouses that have their freestanding. In the auspiced agencies, the agencies that are auspiced and have clubhouses, you can see their advisory boards are more focused. Their biggest one is job development efforts. Not to say the board doesn't help with that in a freestanding clubhouse, but that is one of the biggest roles of advisory boards and clubhouses. And then enhancing the clubhouse's public image. Both boards do a lot with fundraising and maximizing stakeholder and community support. So within clubhouses, my colleagues here at UMass Chan always like this slide because it really gives them a sense of what clubhouses do, the array of things that clubhouses offer for supports for members. And as you can see, recreational activities, reach out, health promotion, help finding jobs or housing, accessing low price meals and entitlements are some of the biggest things offered. You'll see there are 2 bars on the slide. So not only, if you're not from a clubhouse, not only do staff support members in clubhouses, but members support other members. So, it could be members are helping other members find an apartment, help finding jobs, doing outreach. So within the CPQ, we collapse the staff that work in clubhouses into 3 main categories. Administrators are typically your executive directors, program managers. Generalist staff are the day-to-day staff within clubhouses. They're working side by side with members in the work units. They may have responsibility for employment supports, be involved with social weekend programming, etc. Resource staff, and not all clubhouses would have a resource staff. These are people who aren't usually working with members during the work order day. And they could be, janitors, accountants, a receptionist, or a researcher. So on average, a clubhouse has about 6 full-time staff and another part-time staff. Most staff are unit-based staff. Once again, the exceptions to that are usually the resource staff and also some student interns or volunteers. About 20% of staff also identify as mental health service users. And then the last one, so we get asked this a lot too, like how many members per staff should a clubhouse have? And this active member to full-time staff ratio, so it's about 17 active members to 1 full-time staff. This number, now we've been collecting this data for 20, 30 years, and this number really has not changed over time. This member to staff ratio has remained very stable. So on this slide, we have 2 columns. The red maroon is generalist staff, which are far more generalist staff than administrators. The blue columns are the administrators. So you can see that generalist staff typically make less than $60,000 a year, whereas your administrators are more likely to make $50,000 upwards of $125,000. As far as membership goes, the average daily attendance is just under 30 members a day. About 98, 99 for the active membership, so over a 90-day period. I think it's important to keep in mind that not every member is going to come in every day. There are members out working. And some of this, you would expect to see a difference in the active membership versus the average daily attendance. We do notice a greater difference in large urban clubhouses where the distinction between the active membership and the daily membership is greater. On average lifetime, so this total membership is a lifetime of the clubhouse. So if a clubhouse has been open for 21 years, they've served about 750 people during that time. But you can see in that totals column, worldwide, this group of clubhouses over time has served almost 150,000 people. Evening weekend programs, so members may be coming in to socialize in the evening and weekend, about 37 a day or 37 a week or weekend. Clubhouses get about 67 referrals each year. And once again, you can see these numbers range widely. Some of this has to do with, once again, how new a clubhouse is, where it's located, if it's rural or urban. And then outreach. Clubhouses do a lot of support and connections with members and linkages with services in the community. About 70% of people referred to the clubhouse become members. Average daily attendance, once again, we have different ways of slicing and carving up the data. Clubhouses often want to know like what they look like compared to other clubhouses similar in budget size. And here we've kind of broken it out into 4 different categories, you know, like really small clubhouses in terms of budget up to really large. And as you can see, the bigger the clubhouse is, the more members are participating each day. And this is active. We have both monthly and quarterly. And once again, just broken out by different budget sizes by clubhouses. And the numbers in parentheses down below where it says like 300,000 is the number of clubhouses in that category. So 31 clubhouses have a budget under 300,000. Community services by budget size. And then the referral sources. So you can see that people learn about clubhouses and get connected with clubhouses from a lot of different places. The biggest referral source for clubhouses, particularly here in the US, is a community mental health center or another mental health type of program, followed by just a mix of other sources. Self-referral, someone may hear about the clubhouse and go there on their own or hear about it from a family member or another member. Clubhouses also get referrals from hospitals and clinicians out in the community. Just looking at the population, like who is participating, who are the members that come to clubhouses? Just over over 50% male. Approximately 60% white and Caucasian. And once again, this varies greatly. This is a worldwide average. So depending on the country or state, this can look very different. You know, here on this slide, the slice for the Hawaiian Pacific Islander is very small because it's averaged over all clubhouses. But if we took the group of clubhouses in Hawaii, that would obviously be a big piece. And then membership. So who is coming into the clubhouse based on age? And this, I think, slide really kind of emphasizes that the clubhouse membership is available for life and can support members kind of at any point in time. While most, you know, the majority of members are, you know, between the ages of 30 and 60, clubhouses really do support members of all ages. Some clubhouses have young adult initiatives or older adult initiatives today to kind of do more to support and outreach those populations. So diagnoses, many clubhouses require a diagnosis of a mental health condition to be eligible. You can see up top, this is data from 100 clubhouses. There are clubhouses in some countries that do not have any requirements for, in terms of diagnoses for eligibility, which is why that number is so much lower. But about 41% of members participating have a diagnosis of schizophrenia, 20% bipolar, 20% depression, and then a wide mix of other diagnoses, PTSD, things like that. 145 clubhouses indicate that about 37 active members also have comorbid health issues, so more than a third. Housing, where do members live? Just under 50% of members live on their own. Another quarter live with a family. Group housing, about 16%. Shelters, some clubhouses, a small percentage of clubhouses offer formalized clubhouse housing. Once again, we do see some differences in how this looks inside and outside the United States. So members are more likely to live in group housing if you are in the US, and more likely to live with a family member if you are not located in the US. Transportation, how do people get to the clubhouse? Many members rely on public transportation. A club van, if you're in a rural community that doesn't have public transportation, then often you're using a clubhouse van to get to and from the clubhouse, or using an auto, a bicycle. Our friends in Europe tell me that bicycling is often a way used for members to get to the club, or walking. So what are the things that happen during the day? Like what are people doing in the day-to-day operations of the clubhouse? Well, clubhouses typically have at least a lunch every day. Some have also have breakfast or a dinner, you know, an employment dinner, something like that, a social recreational meal. Cleaning, just maintaining the building and grounds, clerical work. Reach out and outreach, so connecting with members who aren't able to come to the clubhouse every day. Tracking attendance and enrollment. Administrative, so this could be, you know, decision making, answering telephones, helping track and develop employment. Some fiscal, so accounting, special education, research, and you can see that the research, this bar is growing. The CPQ is a great way to get members engaged in research. Many clubhouses now have connections with university-based researchers, and that's just a great way to get the clubhouse community more involved in research. So education, most clubhouses have some sort of educational component. Often this is more informal supports. So there could be classes, you know, that are led by staff or members during the work ordered day or outside of the work ordered day. Members often get help with assistance for applying for adult education supports and ongoing supports for education. So it may be helping someone who's taking college courses, you know, could be filling out the financial aid applications or tutoring for a course, all sorts of different things around supporting someone in education. And then in employment, I'm assuming most people know this, but Clubhouse programs offer a wide array of employment supports. Transitional employment, which is typically time limited, 6 to 9 months. It belongs to the clubhouse. So the clubhouse develops these jobs and members rotate through them. The clubhouse provides on-site training and support with absence coverage and an ongoing relationship with the employer. These allow members to try different jobs. Members are supported in the TE positions, including on and at the job site, but the jobs are all integrated. So there's opportunity to work with people who do not have disabilities, who are employed within the company, and members employed in transitional employment positions are paid by the employer. In supported employment, the jobs are not time limited. The positions belong to the member. There's a competitive piece, so somebody has gone through an interview. The clubhouse may have a relationship with the employer and provide some supports, but they do not provide absence coverage. There's a typo there. It should be all SC jobs are integrated and paid by the employer. In IE, this is just a full independent position that belongs to the member, but the clubhouse would provide supports back at the house if someone requests them. And once again, just kind of a wide array of supports around employment, and these really vary by job type and are reflective of the nature of the different types of jobs. So you see there, TE, there's a lot of advocacy with employers and coverage of employee absences, and those are things that typically don't happen in supported employment. On-site job training. There's also support meetings back at the clubhouse. Members get help with job hunting, planning. If there's a skill they need in terms of work, members and staff help other members with that. Some assistance getting to interviews and or work. Some assessments, but you can see that formal assessments happen less frequently. A lot of that happens informally during the work of the clubhouse and the work of the work order day as members and staff work side by side together. So most clubhouses offer all three types of employment. There are clubhouses, particularly outside of the United States, where the nature of disability benefits makes it difficult or more difficult to offer transitional employment. Most clubhouses have approximately 3 employers for transitional employment, 7 or 8 on supported employment, and almost 20 on independent employment. Once again, there's a wide range of variability, and that's reflective of where a clubhouse is and how big of a clubhouse it is. About 5 TE positions, 10 on SE and 20 on IE on average. In terms of placements, so particularly for TE, because the clubhouse has developed the job, members rotate through, so there are more placements per job. And then hourly wages, once again, all averages in terms of costs and wages have not been adjusted for costs of living. But you can see combined on all 3 job types, members and staff earned over $37 million. And then finally, in terms of research, today, over 50% of clubhouses are interested in research. Almost a quarter of clubhouses have a collaboration with a researcher or university. About 17% are involved with a research project, or another 10% are developing a research project. And I think we're right on schedule, and we have plenty of time for questions. I'm going to turn it back to Dee and Lee, who will help moderate the question and answer portion of the webinar.
All right. Well, thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Jerry and Liz. We are right on target with the timing here, and hopefully we get some more questions. I know that was a lot of information, but let's start with the questions that are in the Q&A. We had first question was from James Weiniger from Clubhouse, Ohio, and Magnolia Clubhouse, wondering about the high budgets. Were there only 3 up to $2.9 million budget? Colleen, can you speak to it? Were there any that were left out for those purposes, budget size?
So Fountain House did not submit a CPQ in 2023. I think it's the only time they haven't done one. Usually we'll pull their data back out because Fountain House is so much bigger than the next biggest clubhouse. It tends to skew the averages, although we do include them wherever we can, and certainly in the totals. So they are not included in this. And once again, you have to just keep in mind that these budgets are just converted they could be converted from a currency, in Taiwan or Korea or Norway or Sweden. They're converted to US dollars and just presented here. So once again, this is just kind of a rough number. But most clubhouses do have budgets that are under $1 million. You think back to, I can actually go there. Sorry for the scrolling. So here, over $1 million, over 1,250,000. There's only 14 clubhouses with budgets that big. Clubhouses tend to be, much smaller. There's very few, in terms of budgets, very big clubhouses. And when there are, they're usually a little bit older and located in large urban settings. So James, hello James, I don't know if that answers your question. But certainly the clubhouses in Ohio, unless one was brand new, would be included in this.
Thanks, Colleen. The next question I will also send your way, and that's from Terry Chadwick from Clubhouse International, asking about, can we parcel out the US-based clubhouse for the demographic points, gender, race, etc. Can you speak to that?
Could we? Yes.
Good, great
Yes, we
answer.
can. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways, like you can see, like there are a lot of ways this could be sliced up and looked at. It's just a matter of having the bandwidth to do it. In the past, some coalitions have requested and kind of covered the costs of having more sophisticated reports, like unique to their coalition, done. That's certainly something we can talk about if your coalition really wants that. Just figure out how to make it happen.
And the second part of Terry's question was also about parceling out the averages for those clubhouses that are around 2 years or less. And you were talking about you don't include brand new clubhouses, right?
That's right, because so if you think about it, you're just getting started. You don't have your like full complement of employers yet. You may still be hiring staff or expanding what you're doing the day to day. Your membership is growing. You're going to be small to start, right? Like most clubhouses don't start with 30 members a day. They might start with 6 or 10. So that's why they're out of the averages here. We want to really give people a sense of what the typical clubhouse looks like. And a new clubhouse is obviously going to look a little different than one that's been around for 20 years.
Okay, thank you. Let's the next question we'll send to Liz, and the question is from Michael Stepansky about what are some of the ways that clubhouses collect information on member diagnoses for the purpose of eligibility?
That's a great question. And each clubhouse does it differently. We find many clubhouses are asking about diagnosis in either intake paperwork or first day paperwork that members disclose, or if there is a intake form that's filled out by a provider, kind of a checkbox that says diagnoses and signed off there is what we commonly find. As far as eligibility, it's a standard about ensuring that membership is accessible for anyone with a mental health diagnosis. So really looking at it as not a barrier when coming to the clubhouse, but also knowing that there is a mental health diagnosis that brings someone to our clubhouse community. So we find first day paperwork that once somebody's gone through an orientation process, feeling comfortable sharing that and having that in a file or added to the databases that we talked about. Different clubhouses store information in different platforms, and some have ways where you can store that, or in a paper file that is that's saved. So I would say that. Jerry, do you have any examples of how that's done at Evergreen Clubhouse?
Not offhand. Sorry, you
Yes,
caught me by
many.
surprise.
No, it's all right. Many clubhouses don't collect that information, as Colleen said, and for those that do, making sure that it's in a safe space, but also in a space that members feel comfortable disclosing that. So it's not necessarily a requirement of membership, but a way that it can be held and known from there.
And
Thank,
we're an hospice agency, so most of our referrals come from people already with a diagnosis, and that's included right from the very beginning.
thank you, Jerry.
Lee, I would just add to that. So in some of the places that the entire country doesn't require a formal documentation of a diagnosis, just kind of like a self-disclosure, like I have a mental health condition and I'm here, to get support, is enough. So like a lot of the Scandinavian countries, for example, they do not require any documentation of diagnosis to be eligible to participate. Just that kind of self-disclosure is enough.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the next question here from Casey Edmonds. And her question is about what more do we know about Clubhouse housing, and in what ways are clubhouses meeting the standards? So we can look at that from a research and an accreditation basis. So I think lots of folks on our panel can answer. Colleen, are there things that we know about clubhouse housing from CPQ results?
Well, so what we know is most, the majority of clubhouses do not have like formal housing contracts to provide supports, but they provide a lot of informal supports around housing, whether that's helping someone find a, safe, decent and affordable place to live, helping members move, negotiating with landlords, all those sorts of things, getting furniture or something you might need to live in the community. It could be helping a member navigate the bus routes to get to and from the clubhouse from a new apartment, all those sorts of things. And I think it's really going to vary. And once again, like depending from the CPQ, we do know just the differences in who lives where based on, whether you're in the US or out of the US. So outside of the US, members are definitely less likely to live in a group home setting. That's more of a culturally, I think, part of this country than it is in other places, where other countries are more family oriented and a member might be more likely to live with a family if they're not out living on their own in an apartment or a house somewhere.
Thank you. And maybe Liz, can you speak to like from the accreditation process when a faculty team goes in, what sort of things we are looking for from the accreditation perspective on housing, what clubhouses are doing towards housing?
Yeah. And so if a clubhouse has their own housing program, we're looking specifically if the clubhouse housing follows the standards and has members involved in all aspects. It's not run separate from the standards in that sense. And then if a clubhouse doesn't have a housing program, we're looking at our housing supports integrated into the work order day, our clubhouses supporting the conversation of housing and community support needs. Is it talked about? Is there a space? Is there a space where it's organized and members know where they can go to ask about housing support? Is there a formal part in a unit meeting where somebody can celebrate housing success, or a clear way that people can go and connect about housing? It's not necessarily a prescriptive in that sense, because we know that housing is very unique in every different part of the world, and what that looks like. Some places it's really, really difficult to get housing, but that's not an excuse. That's a way to build conversation and support. Are people helping members move? Is there a system for rental assistance that people are looking at? Are there members and staff who know how to get on housing wait lists? So really incorporating all of these holistic sides of housing into the work order day and structure of the community so that members and staff support this. And as you see in the CPQ slides, it's not just about Clubhouse owned housing. It's, are your clubhouses offering housing support? Is it integrate, are housing services integrated into the clubhouse? So those questions in the CBQ, those questions in the self-study, and what the faculty is looking for on site is that whole picture of how your clubhouse is supporting that.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next question, which is from Webb Lucas, Fresh Start in Michigan. His question is there any variation in responses to racial or ethnicity questions between US or international clubhouses? The language in those questions seems to reflect a US-centered perspective. Colleen, can you answer that one?
Yeah, so there is variation in the beta testing. We did kind of go back and forth about the different categories in the language, and what we settled on was something that seemed acceptable to everybody. It's kind of difficult because depending on the country that you're in, that's, you know, your race or ethnicity is going to be completely different depending on where you are in the world. And so, yes, it is more US centric language. People were okay with what we ultimately used. And, you know, still 65% of clubhouses are in the US. So there's going to be a little bit of that always too, although our colleagues from around the world certainly have been helpful, not only in this iteration of the CPQ, but in prior iterations of the CPQ, just around in terms of like language and categories. So like when I mentioned that, you know, the transportation and bicycling, that was something we hadn't considered as an option here in the US, but it is a very much used option in Europe.
Okay, great. Thank you. Colleen, can you jump to the accreditation outcome slide? I wanted to just make a comment on that based on International is keeping track of the accreditation outcomes in the last 2 years, what's going on. It looks different from this, and I think for a couple reasons. One, like it's different in that we don't have as high of a percentage of 3-year accreditations going out, but we think possibly what might be occurring is if a clubhouse is filling out a CPQ and they had a conditional 3-year that was upgraded, they're probably responding to we have a 3-year accreditation now. So depending on what point in that 3 years they're in, where we're tracking, you know, at the time the report goes out, what it is. So the only reason why I highlight that is if people are kind of measuring their own clubhouse comparison, I wanted to point that out. And the other part of this is it's likely that Clubhouse is responding to the CPQ. I think you said a 71% return rate in this year, probably more likely to be clubhouses that are doing well in a lot of areas and not struggling. So if you know you look at some of those clubhouses that are challenged to meet the standards, completing the CPQ might not be as high on their list, so that might skew it a little bit. Any comments on that or anything to add?
Well, I think also just for some background context, I mean, so this was any point in 2023. So certainly there was a backlog in terms of accreditation due to the pandemic, and Clubhouse International had to catch back up too. So there may be some clubhouses in this that submitted because they had an accreditation visit scheduled, or were waiting to have one scheduled. it could just be a reflection of, you know, it's not all 350 clubhouses. So the 100 that aren't in here, you know, we don't know what their accreditation status is. You know, we didn't go back and look at that to piece it together. This is just who responded.
Right. Thank you. So I think the next question would be a great one for Liz and Jerry, as they are heavily involved in the data and research toolkit and that subcommittee. The question comes from Casey, and the question is around what priority data do you recommend a brand new startup clubhouse begin tracking? What does that look like, and how are coalitions supporting these localized data collection?
Great question, and kind of the heart of why the toolkit um, started and what we were looking at. We try not to be prescriptive in it because we want clubhouses um, to choose the data that they want to collect and what is important for their community, while also knowing that there are really important data markers that are big indicators. I would say employment and attendance are really big indicators of the impact of the work that we do, and are, as you saw in the CPQ slides, a really big part of what is asked in the Clubhouse Profile Questionnaire. In our toolkit, we have highlighted what questions are asked in the CPQ so that clubhouses can know and prepare for and plan in their work order day to gather that data and information, as well as other resources that do that. And there are different ways that clubhouses do that. Attendance, Jerry said beautifully, could be as simple as a sign-in sheet every day and members logging that and bringing that information in. Jerry, do you want to say more about what you guys do at Evergreen?
Well, I I think for starting out with collecting data, it does start with attendance. And those items that we need to document for government agencies or whatever. And then it sort of grows organically. If we're keeping track of how many people are eating lunch, um, we might notice that our attendance level is down on meatless Mondays, which, you know, the club is then faced with the problem of maybe adding some alternatives um, to get more members in. Um, and so it's basically whatever we're curious about, we can start collecting data on.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that the data and research subcommittee did was reach out to some newer clubhouses that had those questions and started to set up some things like what do we want to track here? And there's a pretty comprehensive section in that data and research toolkit that will give you some ideas. So look at that when we publish that, and we'll be doing further editions of that too. So, you know, as clubhouses use that toolkit, like all of the toolkits, please let us know of updates or ideas to improve that.